Hey guys, what's up? Sean here, and today I wanted to discuss a few things in UFC 3 that you may not know about or may not know how to do. I have discovered most of these accidentally, although some of them have been posted on Twitter by Gameplay Dev. He's one of the lead developers on the game. If you want to follow him, I will link his Twitter below, because he sometimes does give tips that the game does a poor job of explaining naturally, and you may find that, oh, that's very helpful and has changed the way I play the game entirely, and I have certainly had that happen. So let's get right into it. Number one is kind of simple, but you know how everyone gets tired of rocking their opponent and then not being able to get through another punch because they block? Well, Gameplay Dev revealed on Twitter that the secret to this is to throw 3 straight punches followed by a hook. Now, a hook and a kick seem to work equally well, but it's basically, straight punches first and then your round punch or round kick. That was the way I would describe it. So like jab, cross, jab, hook, jab, cross, jab, kick. Either way, should break their block, often knocks them down. If it doesn't knock them down, it does break their block, and therefore the next punch will probably knock them down. So throwing 3 straights and then 2 hooks in a row is generally a good way to score a knockdown. Now, of course, the way to avoid this, if you're on the receiving end of this, is to use head movement after the first 3 straight punches to try and avoid something, or preferably during the first 3 straights. But you have to be careful, because if you get hit, you go to sleep. Another striking tip that was revealed on Twitter was to use L1 in conjunction with the right stick, so holding L1 and flicking the right stick to do your advanced lunges. So you can lunge backwards, left and right, and this is very good to get off the fence, to get out of the way of body shots. Like if someone is marching you down across the cage with body shots, just flick the stick back, then throw an uppercut, and you'll generally land because you make enough distance where they're still pressing forward, but you have enough distance where you're not getting hit, so you're not getting stunned, and therefore you can land your uppercut. But it's also good if you're trapped up against the fence, you wait for their combo to end, and when their combo is over, so after they throw, 4 or 5, 6 shots, as soon as they stop, they're not ready to attack right away yet. Now hold L1, flick right or left, preferably towards their lead hand, I would say. Don't go towards their rear hand because that's their power side, but preferably towards their lead hand, flick left or right to get off the fence and then circle back to the middle of the cage. It's generally a good system to get yourself unstuck if you're having a hard time getting off the fence, especially against the more aggressive fighters. Now, these next couple tips are generally about Khabib, or that's where I base them off of. So, first of all, the game is incorrect in its menus. In the menus, it says that this is L1 plus the right stick. That is incorrect. L1 plus the right stick is the advanced lunges during stand-up. L1 plus the right stick will do absolutely nothing for you to stuff a takedown, to counter a takedown. It will not do anything related to takedowns. The correct buttons are R2 and L2, or obviously if you're on Xbox One, you have to adjust this, but you get my point, plus the right stick. So, for example, if someone shoots in on a single leg, you can go to double unders, or you can go to a single leg counter. This, I think, applies to almost all the fighters in the game, although there are some fighters who these things do not apply to. It depends on their ratings, but the higher level guys, this applies to pretty much all of them. If you go to the single leg counter, you will, left or right, you will end up on top in side control from this counter. So if you have someone who is really trying to wrestle you, if you have a Khabib, even a Damian Maia, who they keep coming out and they just want to wrestle you, this might be a good way to avoid it, because you can end up on top. It might de-incentivize them to keep shooting, and then you might get your grappling. Whereas if you just stuff the takedown, which is fine because you may not want to go to the ground with these guys, but if you just stuff the takedown, they may use the attack to get to side control or something from there to finish the single leg. If you're doing this from a double leg, you will do a judo throw. It's the same thing. You end up in side control. It is no different. And if they are doing a double leg, you can attack a submission. So some people have guillotines, some people have kimuras. Again, this may not apply to all fighters, but it definitely applies to the higher guys. That is by doing R2 plus L2 and down on the right stick. That will attack the submission. It is a 2-gate submission. It is very hard to complete though, because they usually have very high stamina at this point. Submissions are already hard, and so they generally are not drained because you haven't blocked any transitions. If they shoot in though, lazily or in a panic when they're tired and hurt, then you might have better success. But again, this is kind of risky because it doesn't always end up where you want, and if it's against someone like Khabib and you attack this and you don't get it, now you're on bottom, and that's not really where you want to be. Continuing with a similar thing, I have no idea what the exact circumstances for this to work are. This does seem more fighter specific than any of the other tips, but when you're up against the fence and you're trying to, prevent a single leg, so you're in the single leg animation up against the fence, you can actually attack a Kimura, and I think a guillotine. I did this once when I was fighting. I have no idea what the circumstances that allowed for this were. All I know is I was up against the fence. My choices were to break or go to either double unders or over unders, and I chose to hold L2, and I was like, oh, I can attack Kimura. Now, this isn't like an instant attack. You have to, charge the meter or whatever you want to describe it as, the circle, and therefore they could block it, I think, or get off the single leg in time if they see what's happening, but I don't think most people know about this, so I think you're, safe to attack it. Again, though, if you're trying to prevent a single leg, this is not a great way, because if you don't complete the submission, you will end up on bottom and in a bad spot if you were trying to avoid getting, wrestled by somebody. My final tip applies once again to Khabib fighters in general, but also to all fighters. Did you know, which I didn't until Joe Rogan said it during the commentary of the game, and I was like, let me try that. You can actually attack a submission when you're in the stacked guard. When you're being stacked, you can attack an armbar or a triangle. Who knew? Now, I recommend the armbar, but the way you do this is to do it like an arm trap, but I think it's far easier than that. So when you hold down L2 and you wait. When they throw a punch, you flick the stick left or right to attack the armbar or triangle. Now, my advice on this is to hold down L2, let them punch, don't do anything. Figure out which side is the armbar and which side is the triangle, and attack the armbar side. The armbar is simply 2 gates. The triangle seems to be like 4 gates, or a normal triangle setup. I'm not really sure why that is, but the armbar is much quicker, much easier to complete. And if you can eat a couple of shots and kind of tire them out, because people, if they get in the stack guard, will just try to mash you into the floor. If you can just try to tire them out a little bit and then attack the armbar, it's a really easy submission. It's a really easy win, and it's very effective against fighters like Khabib, especially, who tend to like to get you to the ground and stack you and then try to beat you unconscious. This is a really great strategy to beat these guys, and I fully endorse it, and I did not know it was in the game until the commentary pointed it out. So the way you do it, once again, is L2 and then flick the stick whenever they punch, similar to an arm trap, although you don't have to guess which side correctly because there's a triangle on one side and an armbar on the other. Although again, I would wait, figure out which side the armbar side is, and then do that side, because that side is far more effective for actually finishing a submission. But either way, it does get you out of the stack guard, and it is basically, I think, impossible for them to counter. I don't think they have any choice but to get stuck in it. So hey, go for it if you can. It's really effective, and I hope that this helps you against these guys who are trying to take you to the ground and just grind you out. So these are my bits of advice for UFC 3 right now. These are things that I discovered that I either didn't know existed or thought would exist because they were in prior titles, but I couldn't figure out how to do them. And sometimes the menus don't even tell you, and there's a lot of confusion, and sometimes you have to go to Twitter to find these things out. So I thought I'd, let everyone know these couple things. I'm sure someone else has done a video on probably all of these things, but maybe not in one place, or maybe you just haven't found that person's video. So hopefully this helped you. I might do some more tips on different things as I, come across them, or as I find that people are repeatedly asking the same thing and don't understand, but I do. However, if you got any weird tips or things you don't think most people know about, you can leave them in the comment section below. Maybe I'll cover them in the future, and I will credit you if I do. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all later.